NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is live from the White House. David Noriega joins us from Los Angeles, and also with us, Paola Ramos, former deputy director of Hispanic Media for Hillary Clinton and an MSNBC contributor. So, Gabe, walk us through this latest executive action.
Hey there, Ana. Good morning. You know, this is a big step for the White House after a crackdown on illegal border crossings by tightening those asylum rules earlier this month. So this latest move, as you mentioned, could impact 500,000 undocumented immigrants living in this country right now. And typically, the U.S. provides a straightforward path to immigrants who enter the country lawfully and end up marrying an American. But this executive action will address those who came here illegally and want to get a green card through marriage. Now, those who were married before today would be allowed to get work permits on a case-by-case basis without ever having to leave the country. And they have to have lived in the U.S. for at least 10 years. They'll have 3 years to apply for that green card to live and work permanently here. And a senior administration official says anyone who has previously been deported will not be eligible. Now, that senior administration official also anticipates this process opening by the end of the summer. Ana, of course, we do expect legal challenges to all this, especially in an election year. Both campaigns already weighing in. The Biden campaign saying that President Biden is trying to keep families together, while former President Trump is trying to tear families apart. The Trump campaign, for its part, is accusing President Biden of prioritizing, quote, illegal immigrants over Americans. Ana?
David, I just want to reiterate that this applies to people who have already been in the U.S. for over a decade. In fact, the Biden administration is saying when they look at those who are applicable to this, it's something on average of 23 years that these applicants have been in the U.S. So how will this be implemented exactly? What is the process like? And what's the practical impact of something like this within our nation's larger immigration system?
Yeah, Ana, good morning. So first of all, this is not something that's just granted to people. There's an application process. And when you're talking, for example, about that residency requirement, people have to be able to prove with paperwork things like mail bank statements that they have lived in the United States for more than 10 years. They also have to prove that they don't have any kind of criminal record. They have to jump through a number of bureaucratic and paperwork hoops to actually get this. So even though we don't really, we don't expect this, according to senior White House officials, to actually open up, applications to actually open up until the end of this summer, you're going to see people start getting ready for this. And I've already spoken to several legal service provider organizations here in California and elsewhere who are starting to gear up to accept pretty much, you know, large amounts of traffic coming through their door of people who are interested in finding out whether they qualify for this and what the process is for applying for it. Now, in terms of the practical impact of this, you know, having covered DACA from pretty much the beginning, you realize that this kind of move has consequences, material, meaningful consequences on the lives of people far beyond those immediately affected. So we're talking about roughly 500,000 people who are estimated to directly qualify for the program. They are, of course, married to about 500,000 U.S. citizens. So we're talking about a million people who will be directly impacted by this. But you also have to remember that a lot of these people live in communities and households and families that are what we call mixed status households and mixed status communities, where some people are undocumented, some people have citizenship, some people have green cards. Just here in the West, for example, in Arizona and Nevada, there's an estimated, in each of those states, 100,000 voters, not people, but citizen voters who live in mixed status households. Those are the kinds of people who could see real material, meaningful changes in their lives as a result of this program. And we're going to see those ripple effects really play out over, if this stands, over the many coming years. Ana?
And so, Paola, let's talk about the politics of this moment. David talks about just how many families who've been entrenched here in the U.S. will be impacted. But take a look at the recent polling here. You have the CBS YouGov poll that finds the majority of voters, 62%, actually favor action that would do the opposite, saying they would support a new national program to deport all undocumented immigrants currently living in the U.S. illegally. And that includes the majority of Hispanic voters. So are you surprised at all that President Biden is taking this action?
No, I think he needed to. I think if we take a step back, there are so many people that are sighing in relief, right? This is a huge, huge moment that many folks in the Biden coalition have been waiting for today. In many ways, it takes me back to the moment, the very day that Barack Obama went from being labeled deporter-in-chief to suddenly being labeled the president of the dreamers. And so I think this could be President Biden's DACA moment. If you take a step back and you think about how we got here. Now, this is a president that over the last 4 years has been completely haunted by this moral dilemma. Will I be the tough guy at the border and with immigration, or will I be the one that injects humanity and dignity and that embraces immigrants? I think for the last 3 years, and you and I have talked about this, for the last 3 years, you have seen a Joe Biden that has fallen into these political traps, right? Sort of leaning into the Republican playbook, perhaps incorrectly believing that he can out-Trump Trump when it comes to immigration. But I really, really believe that they will soon realize that what we're seeing today, this idea of embracing immigrants, embracing dreamers, of leaning into that dignity, what we're seeing today will outweigh the very small political gains that President Biden may have made, for instance, 2 weeks ago, by restricting asylum at the border.
Well, that's just it. It's sort of almost a mixed messaging, which I wonder if that muddies the message ultimately that he's trying to get across.
It is mixed messaging, but I do believe the one consistent thing we have been seeing is that regardless of what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border, right, regardless of all the noise and the mis and disinformation and the fear-mongering, persistently, consistently, for the last 10 years, a majority of Americans have favored some form of pathway to citizenship. And more importantly, this sends a really important message to a crucial part of the Biden coalition that showed up in 2020, right? Those dreamers that organized in Nevada, those mixed status families that organized in Arizona, right? Those coalitions that organized in Georgia, they needed something. And this sort of takes Biden through that finish line. And hopefully it's the beginning of something more.
Of course, it could also motivate Trump voters and those who want stricter limitations, I guess, on immigration and border security. And let me just let you know what Trump is saying about this, how he's messaging to his supporters and other Republicans, calling this mass amnesty, promising to fight it in court. But Trump's campaign blasted out this email last night claiming the move would encourage more migrants to cross the border illegally and saying that they would take American jobs. Fact check that.
Okay, so that is the biggest thing that Joe Biden has to do right now. Reclaim that immigration narrative, right? Reclaim this narrative that has been so distorted for the last 4 years with exactly that. To the point that you're right. In 2021, right, a majority of Americans actually believed that the majority of immigrants that come to this country do it because they want better jobs, better opportunities, and to pursue that American dream. To your point, fast forward to where we are right now, according to Gallup, a majority of Americans suddenly believe that a majority of undocumented immigrants are here and that it is a critical threat to them. And so the most important thing that Joe Biden has to do right now is ground us in the facts. And what do the facts tell you? The facts tell you that there are over 5 million undocumented immigrants in this country that are essential workers. The facts tell you that undocumented immigrants pay at least $50 billion annually on taxes.
Billions of dollars they're paying into taxes,
each year.
And they're not getting the benefits of the programs those taxes are providing.
And most importantly, what the facts tell you is that there are over 10 million U.S. citizens in this country that live with undocumented immigrants. And so part of reclaiming that narrative is that this is no longer an us versus them problem. No, we're not just talking about immigrants and undocumented immigrants and dreamers. We're talking about people that are part of the social fabric of this country. They are part of our families, and I think that's at the heart of what Joe Biden has to do. Right? We're talking about American families, and I do believe he can reclaim that immigration narrative.